Good afternoon, everyone. I'm out here today to say that it's about time that the Liberals start putting up or shutting up at committees. We saw the Liberal House Leader, Steve McKinnon, last Friday come out and try to justify what had gone on last week at committees as they moved many of the committees in secret out of public as we were debating motions related to production document orders, witnesses to appear, etc. And just for the benefit of everyone, I'm going to go through a list of how many committee meetings were actually moved in camera last week. It started at ethics last week when we had a motion on documents of the PM's ethics screens and travel itineraries. The document production related to the assessments concerning the Prime Minister's ethics screen and his international travel itineraries. Canadians do deserve to know why decisions are being made to not invoke the screen when Prime Minister meets with Brookfield VPs, for example, and is involved in decisions that benefit Brookfield. The Liberals filibustered that meeting and the motion that was related to it for several hours. In fact, just 5 minutes after the vote on Motion 9, the Liberals returned to the Ethics Committee meeting, had another member added to it, and within 5 minutes moved a motion to get that meeting in secret. There were other examples that happened last week. The Science Committee on the Spaceport motion to investigate the cost, the value for money, and benefits and risks of the $200 million agreement concerning Spaceport Nova Scotia. That motion was moved April 27th, pre-majority at the end of the meeting. The Liberal chair adjourned the meeting without consent before the opposition could vote on it. Then it returned on Thursday, April 30th, post-majority, and the Liberals immediately moved to go in camera for other business. In camera means in secret for other business without addressing or voting on the motion, and the rest of the meeting occurred in secret. The Transportation Committee had a document production motion on the Montreal Port Authority last Wednesday after filibustering for several meetings. Liberals shut down debate on a document production motion related to the CIB and the Port of Montreal Authority. They then moved a programming motion for C-28 and forced the committee in secret once again. The Human Resource Committee document production on the Curum OAS scandal last Thursday after filibustering for 2 meetings. The Liberals shut down debate on a document production motion on Curum and the OAS scandal. The Liberals then moved to proceed to clause-by-clause consideration of Bill C-20 when the chair's decision that they proceed to motion was in order. It was challenged by the Conservatives, but the chair refused to recognize the challenge and asserted that he could not be challenged on this matter. Public Accounts had a document production motion on the benefits to delivery modernization system. The Liberals filibustered for several hours on a motion to order documents related to the Benefits Delivery Modernization Program. Debate adjourned right before the Liberals passed motion number 9 in the House on Monday. Health was dealing with the prescribed IT documents and summons. Moved in camera for our prescribed IT motions to have the Auditor General investigate and a document production order. Comparing the motions made in public by MP Dan Mazur and what showed up in the minutes of the in-camera meeting, it is clear that the motions were watered down. They publicly blocked our matter at hand, a motion to summon the CEO of Canada Health Infoway, who oversaw prescribed IT. They moved it as a matter of hand motion, and the chair ruled it out of order due to a lack of notice. They used their majority to support the chair in breaking the rules at the matter of hand motions. Those are some of the examples of the Liberals using their newfound majority to not just control committees, but to move it in secret. Last week, the Liberal House Minister tried to justify his actions when he was caught. This happened last Friday, and Conservatives are rightly calling out the House Leader. This was a deliberate and strategic attempt on the part, it came from the top down, to the committees to move these meetings in secret so that Canadians would not have any accountability, not have any transparency or oversight on what was happening. The prescribed IT scandal has been described as an arrive can in waiting, and Canadians deserve to know what's happening with their money. And the Liberals, by their actions last week in this deliberate and strategic top-down approach, deliberately move these issues in camera in secret so that Canadians would not be aware of them, of what's going on at all. Look, this is not a Brookfield boardroom here. This is a parliamentary democracy. We work in public, and committees have a tremendous amount of power to compel witnesses, to summons, to compel documents, and that ability to do that job and to provide that transparency is being taken away by the Liberals through their actions at committee. And I'll remind everyone, the Prime Minister is not the CEO of Brookfield. The Prime Minister is the Prime Minister of this country, and as a result of that, he's accountable to Canadians. And committees do the work that makes sure that the government is accountable to Canadians. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
I was just going to say, actually, so this week at the Security Committee, we'll begin the study on C-22, the Lawful Access Bill. Because we're on the topic committees, I was curious, what is your party's position on that bill? Do you plan to support it? Do you want to amend it? Or are you opposed to it?
Well, there are going to be some amendments that are going to come out of committee, and what we're seeing is a pattern, and I'll use Bill C-11, for example, that we just saw closure on. There were many amendments that were proposed by our committee members that the government is now rejecting. They just, again, use their newfound power in the House to impose a closure notice on it. And so, I expect that if we're going to be providing solutions to problems, from what we're hearing from people, especially stakeholders or advocates, that the government will listen to those and implement those as needed and as required. Because again, when we propose solutions, just like we did on C-11, like we're doing on C-16 now, and like we're going to do on C-22, then the expectation is that the work of committees is important and that they're not going to shut it down or not just implement their will on committees.
Can you give me some details on what amendments you'll propose? What are you uncomfortable with, or what do you want to change?
Yeah, I'm going to leave that with the shadow minister who's leading that as well. I'm here to talk about what's happening at our committees right now. So.
What do you make of some members of committees, particularly the Health Committee, last week tried to ask them why did they push the prescribe IT business in camera? None of the Liberals who we asked that last week answered anything. They just kind of walked into the caucus room and didn't really address the question. Just what do you make of not answering questions as to why they're pushing these things in camera when there's no real obvious reason they should go in camera?
Well, I think I gave the response to that in my opening statement. This is a deliberate and strategic attempt on the part of the government. It's not coming from committee members. It's coming from the top down to keep these things quiet, to keep these things in secret so that you as the media, us as MPs can't report on it, and worse yet, that Canadians can't even see what's going on. The spaceport IT, as I talked about, is hundreds of millions of dollar boondoggle. The prescribed IT situation, we're talking about $300 million that I thought Dan Mazur had a very reasonable motion to get to the bottom of it. And now, the way they're acting by moving everything in secret, they don't want Canadians to see anything, they don't want Canadians to know anything, and they don't want Canadians to understand anything with respect to why they're taking these actions and moving them in secret behind closed doors, because they don't want to be accountable, they don't want to be transparent, and they certainly don't want the opposition to do its job. It's constitutional obligation to hold this government to account. As I said earlier, this is not a Brookfield boardroom. Things aren't done in secret here. This is a Parliament of Canada. We're a parliamentary democracy, and people have the right to know when $300 million is being wasted. People have a right to know why and where that money is going and who's benefiting from it. And that's precisely what, for example, the Health Committee was looking at last week, and certainly other committees related to spaceport and other motions that we had that ended up going in secret.
Est-ce qu'on peut s'entendre en français, M. Berthold, là-dessus, puisque vous êtes ici, là? Comment vous expliqueriez à des membres du public là, en quoi c'est important ce qui se passe en ce moment en comité? Souvent, ça peut paraître comme un peu inside baseball là, pour les gens d'Ottawa, mais comment vous vulgariseriez ça?
Bien, écoutez, c'est pas compliqué. Un comité parlementaire, c'est là que les parlementaires se réunissent pour demander la production de documents, exemple des lettres, des courriels, tout ce qui a pu être échangé dans un dossier. Exemple, si je prends le dossier Prescribe IT, qui est un dossier qui est comparable avec celui d'Arrivscan, c'est là que les partis d'opposition peuvent avoir accès à de l'information uniquement ordinairement accessibles au gouvernement, au bureau du premier ministre. Et ce qu'on assiste depuis une semaine, depuis la motion 9, c'est que le gouvernement, qui a maintenant la majorité au comité, a décidé de transférer ces débats-là qui se faisaient en public auparavant à huis clos, c'est-à-dire secrètement, pas de caméra, pas personne qui peut parler de ce qui s'est passé dans les réunions. Pendant 30 ans, ce qui se dit dans ces comités-là, les gens ne peuvent pas le savoir. Donc, présentement, moi, ce que je pense, ce que je vois, c'est une manœuvre orchestrée délibérément suite à la motion 9 qui vient directement du premier ministre pour dire à tous les comités, on met fin à toutes les enquêtes, on met fin à toutes les demandes de production de documents, on met fin à tout ce qui est litigieux en faisant en sorte que le public ne voit pas les échanges qui vont avoir lieu en comité, comme j'ai dit, ces échanges-là qui permettent d'habitude d'aller au fond des choses, et aussi de mettre fin à toutes les motions de production de documents, des motions, vous vous en souvenez, motions qui étaient même à la Chambre ici, qui a comme retardé les travaux de la Chambre pendant plusieurs mois parce que le gouvernement refusait de transmettre des documents, mais il y en avait des motions comme ça dans plusieurs comités. Et là, présentement, c'est arrêté presque partout. Le gouvernement se sert de cette majorité tronquée pour faire en sorte de mettre fin à la transparence puis à la reddition de comptes, non seulement ici, mais aussi dans les comités.
Comment vous expliquez ça dans vos discussions entre partis? Parce que la question a été posée à Stephen McKinnon vendredi. Lui a dit, tant qu'il y a de la collaboration, ça va bien se passer en comité, puis il remet constamment une partie de la faute sur l'opposition.
Moi, je pense que vous êtes tous témoins ici, là. Pendant la première année minoritaire de ce gouvernement-là, les comités fonctionnaient. On a passé des projets de loi en collaboration avec les libéraux. On a réussi à faire passer des motions pour justement demander à la présidente de Healthway de venir ici, de venir comparaître. Et depuis que la motion 9 a passé, c'est des huis clos, on met fin aux motions pour produire des documents, on arrête toute reddition de comptes. Donc, ce n'est pas à moi à répondre à cette question-là. On voit qu'il y a un mot d'ordre qui a été donné chez les libéraux pour faire en sorte on arrête toutes les enquêtes qui peuvent mener à des révélations qui vont faire des scandales. D'ailleurs, ça ne vient pas de n'importe où, c'est l'intérêt même de Mark Carney comme premier ministre qui ne se présente même pas à la période de questions. Il n'est pas ici encore aujourd'hui. Il assiste presque pas à la période de questions. Donc, pour lui, rendre des comptes à la population, répondre aux questions des médias, ce n'est pas une de ses priorités. Puis malheureusement, c'est les Canadiens qui vont payer le prix de tout ça parce qu'on ne sera pas capable de mettre à jour autant de choses qu'on le faisait dans le passé.
Vous ne pensez pas que il y a une partie de ça qui est de mettre fin à certaines choses qui étaient improductives, disons?
Dit le gouvernement. Et moi, je pense que tous ceux et celles qui ont vu ce qu'on a réussi à faire dans le cas d'Arrive-Can, dans le cas de l'ingérence étrangère, ne penseront pas ça. Parce que tous les résultats qu'on a réussi à démontrer, il y a des gens qui ont été amenés en justice, c'est toutes des choses qui ont été révélées en comité. Et ce que fait présentement le gouvernement, c'est éviter de rendre publics des documents qui peuvent les rendre imputables de certaines décisions qu'ils ont prises, qui peuvent aller jusqu'à de la corruption. Donc, ce qu'on dit, soyez transparents. Vous voulez de la collaboration, collaborez avec nous. Arrêtez de mettre des huis clos. Arrêtez de tout vouloir que tout se passe en secret. Puis, si vous voulez de la collaboration, travaillez avec nous pour qu'on puisse donner leur juste aux Canadiens sur tous les dossiers dont on a parlé.
Des mesures qui ont été annoncées ce matin pour...
Je vais revenir là-dessus dans le prochain point de presse, à peu près.
I do want to answer the one question about collaboration. I know. Look, we all saw Steve out there talking about the last year. There's been collaboration. To the Liberals, collaboration is a one-way street. And if you look at what happened last week, they waited till the writs dropped. They moved closure on that motion. The motion was voted on, and within 5 minutes at the Ethics Committee, they came in and shut down debate on the motion. So, when Canadians elected government a year ago, it was based on a minority. And over the last year, we've seen a lot of work at committees. We've seen a lot of things exposed because the opposition had the majority, just like we have over the last 2 terms, right? If it wasn't for the committees, the Winnipeg Lab scandal would never have happened. The We Charity scandal would never have happened, would never have seen the light of day. The Arrive Can, which I referred to earlier, which has the potential through Prescribe IT to be the same type of scandal, all of those things came as a result of committee oversight and committee work and being able to produce documents, compel witnesses, We even had one of the ArriveCan people appear at the bar. If it wasn't for the work of committees, we run a risk now of everything being moved in secret. We also run a risk of not being able to get to the bottom of things as the Liberals control it. They will have many procedural tools in their box to shut down committees' work, to move things in secret, to adjourn debates or adjourn meetings with this newfound majority, and to water down motions. And this is something that all of us need to keep an eye out. When you saw some of these motions, and I've referred to Dan Mazur's motion, look at the original motion and look at the motion that came out of in camera, you'll see how significantly it's watered down. So Canadians aren't going to get the answers that they deserve. Parliamentarians aren't going to get the answers they deserve because of what they're doing to committees right now. So it's time, as I said at the beginning, that Steve McKinnon, the House Leader, either puts up or shuts up. If he's sincere in what he said, he will let the committees do their work and move motions as appropriate.
Is there a good use of going in camera? Like, what would, in your mind, be a proper use of in camera versus not?
When we're planning meetings, when we're talking about witnesses' appearance, when we're drafting reports before they're presented to the House, that is a good use of in-camera meetings. Abusing in-camera meetings to disrupt the work of parliamentary committees is not a good use of it. Moving things in secret in a parliamentary democracy is never a good thing for transparency, accountability, and oversight. This is not a Brookfield boardroom. This is a parliament, a parliamentary democracy, and Canadians deserve to know the answers. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. This morning we had Immigration Minister Lena Diab at the Immigration Committee on the recent scathing Auditor General's report regarding the mass fraud that was found in Canada's foreign student visa issuance program. There was actually quite a bit of new information that we uncovered this morning in our questioning of the minister, and my colleagues are going to speak about that, starting with Mr. Ho.
The Auditor General report found 153,000 cases of non-compliance with international students that are in Canada. And today we learned at Immigration Committee from the Liberal Immigration Minister that 14%, so representing roughly 21,000 of those people, have now sought asylum. I asked her if the checks and balances are working in our immigration system, and she said yes. Well, they aren't working. The Liberals have lost control of our immigration system, and Canadians are paying the price.
Sorry. One of the things that I asked the Minister, I've been following up on questions I've asked her in the past about housing for students and asylum seekers. We learned today that the government has been spending tens of millions of dollars allowing municipalities to buy hotels. So I asked the Minister if how many of the students, of roughly the 22,000 students, are staying in these hotels that are being purchased by municipalities. She didn't really have an answer for me, and she also didn't have an answer about what happens with these assets once governments and municipalities are done with them. Who gets the money back? Canadians are spending tens of millions of dollars allowing municipalities to buy hotels for asylum seekers. We think that's wrong.
The minister couldn't answer some basic, simple questions about proper screening before allowing people to enter our country. At one point, the minister and even the deputy minister admitted that they had no way of tracking entry and exit of temporary permits that they gave to people to come into Canada. It doesn't appear that they are taking screening very, very seriously, and unfortunately, that has resulted in some illicit people coming into the country, including, of course, terrorists from the well-known terrorist organization, the IRGC.
The Auditor General identified a process she called light touch, which is essentially a way for the department to approve files with very little looking at that file. They assume that somebody prior to them had actually looked at the file. So my question to the minister was, have they eliminated this process? And what was telling, and it's kind of the same as the theme that we had today, was that she didn't really know and had to flip over to the deputy minister to answer the question. He's been on the job for about 2 months, and he actually has a bit of a grasp of what's going on in the department. She does not. And so that's very concerning, very troubling when a country like Canada has an immigration minister that can't answer basic, simple questions and has to defer to other people to actually find an answer. It was very concerning.
So just to recap, some of the things that we had major concerns about were the fact that the minister did admit this morning that over 21,000 people of the fraudulent flags that were made by the Auditor General have now claimed asylum. As my colleagues have mentioned, this has a big cost to the taxpayer, but also to people who are legitimately fleeing persecution. The other big concern that we had was the fact that there really is no, as my colleagues have mentioned, method for tracking exits of people who have entered the country fraudulently. And at the same time, we asked her, well, why are you still issuing new permits when there's clearly no evidence to this effect? And that's, she couldn't answer that question. What was really interesting, though, was we did ask her if she'd been meeting with the Prime Minister, if the Prime Minister had set deadlines for addressing these major concerns. She did say that she met with the Prime Minister on a weekly basis, and she said that she talked to him regularly. So today we're wondering why the Prime Minister, this really is look, I think everybody in the media has now said that she probably is going to be fired. The question is, why hasn't she been? And now this is a question of the Prime Minister's judgment.
They talked about working with CBSA to try to get an entry-exit system going by the end of the year. What are you going to be looking for as they start to roll out these pilot programs, the one they talked about going for next month, or they're going to follow up with people with expiring visas? And as we learn more about what this entry-exit system is going to look like as it gradually rolls out?
My big question is, why did they let in, over 1 million foreign students and more temporary foreign workers without an exit system? And it's not just the Auditor General report scope. Even the Minister said it today. There's problems with other areas as well, too. So the reality is there could be up to millions of people now on expired or expiring temporary work permits of one form or another. And what the government admitted today is they don't have a plan to track those exits. So, I think the question of why are you still bringing in hundreds of thousands or issuing hundreds of thousands of new temporary foreign worker permits, new foreign student visas, when that system isn't in place, and when there are many people that they can't flag. So the onus is on the government to answer that question. It's our job as opposition to push them to actually table a report, which they didn't do today. Thank you.
Je vous remercie. Je prends la parole aujourd'hui, c'est Elizabeth May, chef de Parti vert du Canada. Je prends la parole pour expliquer le vote que je vais faire cet après-midi. It's an unusual moment, and I think it may be, if my memory serves, the first time I voted with the Conservatives on one of their Opposition Day motions. They're called Supply Days. And it was a surprise, and recently noted that the great environmental group in British Columbia, Dogwood, had posted to its members that it was also surprised to find itself agreeing with Monsieur Pierre Poilievre on the subject of the so-called Canada Sovereign Wealth Fund. So, as you may have heard in the comments that Green Party made following the release of the spring economic statement, we are underwhelmed by the so-called Canada Strong Fund. The Conservative Party Opposition Day motion, which will be voted on later today, much of the verbiage makes me uncomfortable. I wouldn't vote for every line in their preamble. But the bottom line is this, that it isn't a sovereign wealth fund. What's being proposed is dressed up to maybe remind voters of what's done in Norway, where they set aside oil revenue and put it in a fund, basically a rainy day fund, which means that Norway has a real sovereign wealth fund. But saying we're going to borrow $25 billion and call it a Canada Strong Fund, and someday Canadians will find out if they can invest in it, as the Prime Minister said we'd be able to. They've created the one thing in the spring economic statement that was really created was a Canada Strong Fund Transition Office to, once it's established, consult and then tell us how this thing might work. What we do know is that it's being created by $25 billion of new debt, which could so much better be spent on things that Canadians need far more. So, je vais expliquer en avance parce que c'est presque, je pense, la première fois que je vote en faveur de la motion de journée d'opposition du Parti conservateur, et je pense que c'est une bonne idée explique. I talked also to Deputy Leader of the Green Party of Canada, Mike Morris, in Kitchener Centre, and he said, yeah, explain like every word of it, but this may be the chance to say to Canadians, this isn't really a sovereign wealth fund. If it was one, if we had details, if we had an explanation. But if we want to know where the wealth is, we could, for instance, look at the Canada Pension Plan funds, $80 billion controlled by the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board, which under its legislation must only invest in things that have maximum return on investment, which means Canadian pension dollars are mostly invested outside of Canada. That's outrageous. And much in the United States, outrageous. Why don't we repatriate our own pension dollars? Why don't we put in a wealth tax? Why don't we put back a financial transaction tax? Put that money as the basis of a true sovereign wealth fund. Est-ce qu'il y a des questions? Je suis disponible.
To the Auditor General's reports and the Environmental Commissioner's reports, just wondering if there's any Green Party reaction, particularly to hazard maps. We seem to be falling behind, falling short of the target. And when it comes to the flood hazard portal that the government is rolling out, doesn't consider climate change.
No. We're, of course, the Commissioner for Environment and Sustainable Development reports are always critical. Seminole, I plan to actually put forward a written review and fuller reflections on it, both the Auditor General and the Commissioner for Environment and Sustainable Development. But it's obviously really a concern that we're falling behind on almost everything, and certainly on hazardous mapping, certainly floodplain mapping. We used to have shared federal-provincial floodplain mapping in this country right up until, believe it or not, early 1980s it was discontinued. We need, in a time of climate crisis, when we're facing tipping points that are, and of course, you all reporters, David, you probably are following the threats of up to a 50-50 chance of losing the Gulf Stream stalling and that whole Atlantic circulation system, which will have devastating impacts on global planetary systems. And it's as if we've been cast back to a time when no one knew the words climate change doesn't get mentioned, doesn't get discussed. And we are falling behind, obviously, on our climate targets, our nature targets, and even fairly administrative things like making sure we have hazmat targets and are mapping properly. We're not at all prepared for what's going to happen to us in this summer. We're looking already, we have heat warnings in British Columbia of 32-degree temperatures coming up this weekend. So again, heat dome, lack of preparation, wildfire, lack of preparation, flooding, lack of preparation. It's actually a very, when one thinks about it, it's terrifying and also avoidable. And we're just sleepwalking along as if nothing much has changed except that this new government is going to build more pipelines and ignore the climate crisis. But it is upon us. Merci. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Rachel Dancho. I'm the Industry Shadow Minister for the Conservative Opposition. I'm joined by Member of Parliament Shelby Kramp-Neuman, our U.S. Trade Lead, Member of Parliament Kyle Seeback, our Labour Lead, and Member of Parliament Luc Berthold, our Quebec colleague, who will be providing commentary in French. So today's announcement from the Liberal government was a clear admission that the Liberal government has failed to deliver yet again a deal on the tariff dispute despite thousands of job losses. You'll recall that 1 year ago the Carney Liberals were elected on the sole promise that they were going to deliver a trade deal for Canadians to provide our workers the relief that they needed. And yet again, in that time, thousands of manufacturing jobs have been lost, and today is a clear admission that there is no deal in sight. So today is really more broken promises, no deal, and Band-Aid solutions. The loan top-ups that they announced, while are helpful in some regard, are not a long-term solution or even a short-term solution in many regards. If you take mold makers, for example, some of them ship $8 to $10 million worth of molds every month to the United States. So some of these loans represent a few weeks, if that, of relief. These are not long-term solutions. They're barely short-term solutions. So just to reiterate, today is an admission that there is no trade deal on the horizon, despite promising a year ago to Canadians that the Carney Liberals were the best ones to deliver a deal. Clearly, that has not come to fruition. What's really important as well is that what we hear time and time again, whether it's at committee, whether it's from the mold makers themselves, whether it's from steel and aluminum, whether it's from the auto sector, they need a deal. They need urgency to get a plan so that they have clarity on how to move forward. Today again, is more Band-Aid solutions. And so now I'll turn it over to my colleague, Luc Berthold.
Bonjour. La nouvelle qu'on a apprise ce matin, que les libéraux allaient mettre en place un programme d'aide pour les entreprises touchées par le tarif, est en soi une très mauvaise nouvelle. Ça veut dire qu'ils ne sont pas près d'une entente avec les États-Unis sur le tarif, malgré le fait que le premier ministre lui-même avait annoncé lors de la dernière campagne électorale qu'il était le mieux placé pour avoir une entente, une bonne entente avec les Américains. Il avait même poussé l'audace jusqu'à dire qu'il y aurait une attente pour le mois de juillet. Puis on se retrouve un an plus tard avec une situation où les tarifs sont plus hauts, où les entreprises ferment, où il y a des milliers de jobs qui sont perdus partout au Canada. Moi-même, vous l'avez vu la semaine dernière dans Menegakis, l'érable binière, il y a eu 2 entreprises manufacturières dans le domaine du meuble qui ont fermé leurs portes. Pourquoi? En raison des tarifs qui doivent payer les Américains pour avoir leurs meubles et aussi en raison du dumping asiatique et qui vient de tous les pays, particulièrement la Chine. Si le premier ministre était moins occupé à essayer de plaire à la Chine, peut-être qu'on aurait en ce moment des tarifs, des contre-tarifs pour empêcher ce dumping-là et peut-être qu'il y aurait 2 entreprises dans ma région qui seraient encore ouvertes. Malheureusement, l'annonce d'aujourd'hui qui sont des prêts pour moderniser, ce n'est pas une solution à court terme. Ce que les gens ont besoin, c'est une solution maintenant. Meubles South Shore avait perdu depuis 2022 77 % de ses clients. C'est absolument incroyable et malheureusement, c'est un pansement sur un bobo qui ne guérira pas tant aussi longtemps que M. Carney ne réglera pas la question des tarifs comme il l'avait lui-même promis aux Canadiens. Merci.
Thank you. It's very clear. It's been a year and there are still no deals. There's been an incredible amount of announcements, empty promises, while Canadians continue to pay the price. So I ask myself, where is the urgency after 1 year? And the Prime Minister, clearly, we have to think about it. What has he accomplished in the last year when it comes to trade with Canada and the United States? From my perspective, we really need to pull down the temperature and focus on businesses because there has been a complete failure to get the job done. Bottom line, we have to be honest and let's look at the fundamental issue at hand. The loans aren't relief. They are not solving the tariff problem. We have to reiterate and we have to underscore and we have to be firm. We need to get a deal, bottom line.
What I think we've seen over the last couple of weeks is very clearly that the Liberals have adopted a strategy of delay. It's been well reported in the media, and despite questioning in the House of Commons and the ambassador at committee, they did not deny that that was the case. So if you're going to be playing for time, there's consequences to playing for time, and what we're doing now is we're seeing those consequences. The closure of the auto assembly plant in Brampton, the closure of steel mills, the closure of softwood lumber mills. Many of those mills will never reopen even when those tariffs are lifted because the damage is so severe. And what they announced today, as my colleagues have said, is a tacit admission that relief on these tariffs will not be coming anytime soon. These are, and I want to say this, these are loans. They will charge interest. They will be repayable, and there are no strings on what can be done with these loans. So they could be given for executive bonuses while they continue to lay off workers. So the people who are bearing the brunt of all of this, the failure of the Prime Minister to keep his promise of getting a deal a year ago, his promise, these aren't things we're holding him to, it's his own promise, and the tens of thousands of workers who continue to lose their jobs, it is the Liberals' responsibility for all of that. And they have not said, even today, the Minister could not clearly say what these loans would be used for. So I suspect that businesses will be able to do whatever they want with those, and the closures and the job losses will continue. The people who are bearing the cost of this are the everyday people that go to work. They're the ones who are bearing the cost of the failure of the government to get the issues on tariffs resolved that they promised to get done a year ago.
The Steel Association is calling for more tariffs on derivatives because of the recent changes that we saw on April 6th. Do you think that's a good idea?
I think what the steel industry needs, first and foremost, that they've made clear is some certainty and a trade deal. And that was promised a year ago from the Carney Liberals. Again, they were elected on the promise that they would deliver a deal. They promised it last summer. They've been promising it. And today, I think, is a clear admission that it's not coming anytime soon. So what the steel and aluminum industry, number one, want is the tariff relief and a deal. That's not announced today. That's nowhere.
But in the meantime, do you support that?
I think we support measures to ensure that our industry survive. So we understand, again, why these loans were announced, because they failed to deliver on the deal that they promised us. They keep failing on this. And we heard clearly at committee, for example, from some of the mold makers out of Montreal, Jonathan Azapardi is his last name. He's from Laval Toul. He said the loan is not a good option, and he was talking about a plan. These businesses are surviving week to week. They need some certainty, and what we keep receiving is just piecemeal from the government. So today is just another Band-Aid solution. They need certainty, and in order to get that, we're increasingly concerned that there is an urgency being had by the Liberal government. If you step back a year ago, you'll recall there was urgency. The Liberals were going to fight for a deal. 12 months later, thousands of job losses later, nothing. And today is a clear admission it's not coming anytime soon. So we were reading this announcement today very concerned that there is no deal coming at all, and the Liberals have said nothing to the contrary. So we are very, very concerned about our mold makers, our auto sector, all of these. They need to be able to plan for their bottom line. This isn't going to help them beyond a couple of weeks, maybe months, if they're lucky. Yeah.
Outreach across the aisle, just on the Mr. Seeback's point about the lack of conditions on these loans, because we've seen in the past these loan programs get announced, it goes to pay for CEOs, goes to pay dividends, and once again, workers kind of get left holding the bag of, well, we're last in line here. So we're going to reach out to push for any kind of condition being added to these loans.
Yeah, absolutely. You should not be able to get these loans while you're laying workers off. That should be condition number one. They should be used to keeping people in the factories doing the work, which is what the employees absolutely want to do. And I just want to say one other comment. What the Prime Minister has said is these are small deals. He doesn't want to get a small deal. These are not small deals to the steel and aluminum industry. They're not small deals to the mold industry. They're certainly not small deals to the auto industry. I think his dismissiveness of this is an insult to every worker who's lost their job over the last year.
So if I could actually touch on that, Kyle mentions a really good point. When we lose the manufacturing capacity for this, it's not coming back. So that puts our national security at risk. Mold makers aren't just making parts for cars, which is important to our national economic resilience. But when we lose this kind of high-value manufacturing, that means when we talk about defense and building our industrial defense complex, we're losing that capacity every single day that there is no deal. And again, today's announcement, this Band-Aid solution, isn't going to save our advanced manufacturing. It's just a slow death to doors being closed every single day that we're not getting the deal that Mr. Carney promised Canadians a year ago.
You mentioned we need to take down the tone more, get a deal going. One of the irritants the Americans keep bringing up, lack of liquor on most provinces' shelves from the States. Should the premiers put aside some of their bans that we've seen in Ontario, Manitoba, BC, basically everywhere but Alberta and Saskatchewan, and put American booze back on the shelf so we can get to the table?
I think ultimately we have to remember that there are consequences being affected every single day by all industries, and the faster we can get back to a deal, the faster we can get back to a table and have the communication between all levels of government. We have stakeholders at the table, we have opposition at the table, recognizing the urgency of this deal. This is the paramount issue here.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good to see you. I got to ask you, why is Trudeau's name coming up in question period with your conservative questions these days? There's a lot of mention of the former Prime Minister. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing?
You mean former Prime Minister?
Yes.
It's the usual business.
The tariff relief announced today, $1.5 billion, but it was mainly aimed at steel, aluminum, and copper.
Haven't even had a chance to look at it, sorry. I mean, the new relief, from what I've heard, is a good start. I mean, I just came from the opening of the ground breaking for the Afghan monument, so I think I'm going to be taking care of myself right now. I think I'm just going to head in. Thanks so much.
Good afternoon. I think it's important that the Prime Minister works towards a deal. He promised us a trade deal by July 21. He says he can make a deal within 10 days. Let's try and get to a deal with our largest trading partner.
And what should be done about it?
I don't know what the provincial government elections Alberta is going to do, but certainly to release that kind of information or have that publicly available and not not understand how that happened. I think that's a concern. It needs to be investigated and reviewed, and people need to be held accountable.
Should there be a public inquiry? There are questions about whether it should go that far at this moment?
Yeah, you know what, I'm going to let the Provincial Government Elections Alberta try and figure that out. Hopefully, you know, like I said, whoever leaked this information is accountable. This can't be the new norm for sure.
What about on a Keystone revival, what the American president is talking about, what your thoughts?
Yeah, obviously very positive. We need to have additional markets and to get our products to Tidewater, but certainly I think a pipeline to the west coast, northern BC is critical. Keystone is a benefit, but again, 70% of our product is going to the United States. We're selling at a discount. They refine it, sell it on the world market for world price. We need to get our products to the Asian market as well.
Are you concerned about fertilizer costs for farmers right now? Like, is that one of these issues that might be overlooked as we have so many other world issues going on right now?
Yeah, this is critical. You know, for the most part, producers this spring are okay. They would have purchased it last year. I think what we need to be looking towards now is next year. What we're hearing from fertilizer companies now is we will not. So normally a farmer would buy their fertilizer this spring and they would lock in the price for when it's delivered next year. Now what we're hearing is fertilizer companies saying, A, we're not going to lock in a price because we can't possibly predict what the price is going to be next year. Secondly, we're not even going to commit to supply. So we could have exorbitant prices or lack of fertilizer entirely. So when fertilizer prices are already doubled, you know, $1,400, $1,500 a ton, farmers are going to have a tough choice. Do I take the economic hit and try to get a loan or something to purchase the amount of fertilizer I need? Or do I use less fertilizer, bringing down my yields, again impacting my viability? What we're asking the Liberals to do is they have a 35% tariff on fertilizer imports. We are the only G7 country that has that. This is one thing that they can control. Remove that 35% tariff and bring down those fertilizer prices for next year.
Anything else that we can do to support farmers, or is it just the fertilizer price tariff that you want?
Well, certainly the industrial carbon tax is an issue. You know, it's not on farm fuel, but on everything else in the supply chain, it has an impact. There's no question. But for one thing that the government does control that they can do right now is remove that tariff. Thanks, you guys. Appreciate it. Yeah,
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be joined here by Blake Richards, our Shadow Minister for Veterans Affairs. We have our Defense Committee colleagues, Cheryl Gallant, Jeff Kibble, and also our Deputy Shadow Minister for Veterans Affairs, Kathy Wagenthal. We are actually out here wanting to talk about the closure motion that's happening on Bill C-11 and how the Liberals are shutting down debate. This is an abuse of their newfound majority that they were able to steal from the Canadian people. That with this majority government, they have now shut down debate on the military justice reforms on Bill C-11. This is at report stage where we've come forward with a number of great amendments that we worked across party lines with the support of the Bloc and the NDP. By listening to veterans, by listening to military experts, we're able to make the changes that empower the victims of military sexual trauma. This is about making sure that people have a choice of which justice system they use for the prosecution of sexual assault and sexual misconduct, whether it be in the civilian system, which currently is a choice right now within the Canadian Armed Forces, or if they want to stay within the military justice system. The amendments that David McGuinty brought forward as Minister of National Defence will actually remove choice completely from those who suffer trauma from military sexual misconduct. We want to make sure that there is accountability and that there is justice for those who have experienced this, and that they can ensure that those perpetrators are held to account and properly punished, whether in the military or by the civilian justice system. Unfortunately, by using closure, the Liberals are proving once again that they would rather undermine democracy and would not at all take into account what has been said at committee. As much as they want to talk about bringing forward the recommendations of Madam Justice Arbour in her report from over 5-6 years ago, they haven't looked at what's happened recently. Minister McGuinty admitted at committee, and again today in the House, he avoided the question of who he has actually talked to since becoming the Minister of National Defence on making the changes that veterans and survivors have been asking for. It's a sad day that we have to come out here and say that the reforms that are so desperately needed within the justice system, the reforms that were asked for by the victims of military sexual misconduct and military sexual assault, the reforms that were recommended by people within the military themselves, like the Provost Marshal General, the Director of Military Prosecutions, and the Director of Defence Council Services, have all been ignored by this government. Never mind the academics and other military justice experts who appeared at witnesses at the National Defence Committee. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Blake so he can bring comments on how this is impacting upon the victims and our veterans.
To see, the changes that were requested in this bill, the amendments that were requested in this bill, coming, directly from women veterans themselves, to see those being rejected, especially in this anti-democratic kind of a way, is deeply offensive to those women veterans. We've heard from a number of them, this is just another in a troubling pattern that we've seen from this government of, putting veterans and especially women veterans out sort of as props or pawns, and rather than actually taking into account what they're hearing. They're asking for a choice here in terms of the system that they would want to see this in, and the government's ignoring that. This is we last year, the Veterans Affairs Committee that Kathy and I sit on, had a very groundbreaking study of the experiences of women veterans. There was a number of different recommendations made in that study, and for the most part, almost entirely, those recommendations have been ignored. One of the things that was suggested at the time was to set up a Women's Veterans Council to advise the Minister of Veterans Affairs and the government, and that Council of Women Veterans has been ignored to the degree where they were raising the alarm over and over how they felt they had no access to the minister, no access to the government. They were being completely ignored and used, and it came to the point where the majority of the members of that committee en masse had to do a resignation to draw attention to the fact that women are being ignored, that veterans are being ignored by this government, and this is just another in a troubling pattern of seeing that occur. We're here today to stand against such an anti-democratic way of doing that.
Any questions? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
You're looking for the new Governor General being announced tomorrow. What do you want?
Look, I met with the Governor General today, the existing one. I think she is a person of incredible integrity, someone I've looked up to for many years, and very grateful to have a few minutes with her and her partner. And I hope whoever comes in has the same level of poise and distinction in serving Canadians.
Minister, Global News is reporting that China...
General tomorrow. Bilingual woman, CBC was reporting.
Oh, have you?
What do you want to see in a new Governor General?
It's going to be me.
Well, what do you want to see? Come on, stop.
I'd love to see a conservative member. I don't know. I don't make that decision. That's a decision made by the Prime Minister, and obviously the Governor General should reflect the best of us as Canadians, and there are many different criteria that could be met to reflect the best of us.
Do you want to see a Westerner?
I always like to see a Westerner, but in all seriousness, I trust the Prime Minister's judgment. Hey, Abby, how are you? Good.
Oui. Qu'est-ce que vous pensez? Ça va être une femme bilingue. Qu'est-ce que vous aimeriez voir chez cette candidate?
Bien, déjà, c'est beaucoup, là. Que ce soit une femme, c'est intéressant. Si elle parle français, c'est encore mieux. Maintenant, ses compétences, on verra. Je n'ai pas été avisé de la nomination encore. Là. Je vais attendre de savoir exactement de qui on parle avant de le prononcer. Mais qu'elle parle français, c'est déjà un plus. C'est quelque chose d'important, je pense, d'essentiel.
Est-ce que le Bloc est toujours d'avis que c'est une institution qui devrait disparaître?
Tout à fait. C'est bon? Merci.
Oui, gouverneur général. Oui, c'est la porte, ce serait une femme bilingue. Qu'est-ce que vous en pensez? Qu'est-ce que vous aimeriez voir chez cette candidate?
Bien, c'est toujours le loisir du premier ministre de choisir le gouverneur général qui fait son affaire. Dans la mesure où c'est quelqu'un qui parle français, ce sera déjà une progression. Ben, tu sais, c'est pas nécessairement une fonction pour laquelle j'ai beaucoup d'enthousiasme là, et beaucoup d'admiration. Là. Donc, je suis pas particulièrement excité là, par la chose.
Vous pouvez élaborer là-dessus sur votre enthousiasme, sur l'institution de la gouvernance générale?
Ben, c'est-à-dire que c'est la gouvernance générale, la représentation de la monarchie. Je sais que M. Carney, là, c'est un grand adepte de la monarchie, mais je pense que c'est quelque chose pour lequel on devrait avoir une réflexion collectivement si on ne serait pas temps de mettre ça au rencard aujourd'hui. Donc, tout le cérémoniel autour de ça, je dirais que j'embarque pas trop là-dedans. Yes, well, I can tell you that, well, the fact that we hear that it might be someone that at least speak French will be something like that we can see like a progression, but it still doesn't make an enthusiast, bring an enthusiast on my side about the function that is pretty much useless, and that we should have a thought about why it's still there at a time when we don't need a monarchy anymore. Thank you.
Mr. Dancho, new Governor General tomorrow. It's a woman. She's bilingual. What should we see in a Governor General? What do you think?
Well, I mean, you know, if we take the consideration of the last couple, I mean, we need to make sure that it's a French speaker that understands all of Canada. You know, I've been looking forward to see who that recommendation is going to be.
Should they be an Acadian? Should they be from Nova Scotia? What do you think?
Listen, every province should be represented in the Governor General in one way or another, so it'll be interesting to see what happens.
General tomorrow. She's a woman, she's bilingual. What qualities should she have?
I look forward to finding out who the person is.
Why is it important for someone to be fully bilingual for this one?
Well, personally, I think that we have 2 official languages in Canada, and I do think the Governor General, as the symbol of the country, should be able to speak both of Canada's official languages. I think it's a very important thing, and as somebody who's from a linguistic minority myself in my province, I think I feel it very fulsomely that would be a very important thing. Have a great day.
Being announced tomorrow. She's a woman, she's bilingual. What qualities should she have? Do you think she should be from BC?
Well, I think we should have a Governor General. BC is, it's always great to have someone from BC in Ottawa. Always.
Governor General tomorrow. It's a woman, she's bilingual. What qualities are you looking for?
I think we're looking for somebody who can unite us, somebody who loves Canada, is going to help us celebrate our successes, and approach our challenges with grace and courage.
Should they be from southwestern Ontario?
I can tell you it's not me. I'll guarantee that.
But is there does regionalism matter to you as a southwestern Ontario?
That, you know what, we just need somebody who can bring Canada together and through a couple of our challenges, and I'm going to respect whatever the choice is. Take care. Oh, thank you for that.
Hey, Ted, there's a new Governor General being announced tomorrow. She's a woman, she's bilingual.
And she's from Thunder Bay?
I don't know.
I hope
should
so.
she be from Thunder Bay?
Absolutely. I don't know where. Really?
You know,
really? A new Governor General?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
What do you want to see in the new Governor General? You've experienced many things in this country.
I don't know. I don't have much of a comment. The old one was good. Not looking for anything much in a Governor General. How's that for an exciting answer?
There we go. Welcome to
I like to say something more clever, but I don't know.
medical advice.
Yeah.
Mr. Lawrence, new Governor General tomorrow. She's bilingual. She's a woman. Should she be from Kirby, Ontario?
Every appointed position should be from Kirby, Ontario. I'll get that on the record right now. I really don't know anything, so I'm not really in a place to comment.
But we're all asking about qualities. You know, there are qualities you look for in a leader, in staff, in people you elect, and so on. I mean, as the head of the military, as the vice regal, what do you think?
Yeah.
What are you looking for?
I mean, obviously, you want a person with a leadership, person with presence. I think charisma would be a bonus. Those would be the kind of things we'd be looking for. Thanks very much, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. The new Governor General tomorrow. She's bilingual. She's a woman. That's CBC reporting that. Should she be from Vancouver Island? Should I don't know. We're just looking for qualities that you'd like to see in the country.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we obviously need someone that is willing to work hard, that has strong values and cares deeply about every part of this country, and has a strong record of being, strong values and ethics. I think that's what everybody would like to see in a Governor General.
Like a real Westerner, someone who's...
Look, we haven't even seen a senator from Vancouver Island in over 50 years, so would I ever like to see the Governor General be from Vancouver Island? Absolutely. But, it's pretty hard for us to get recognized here. So.
The Governor General being announced tomorrow. It's a woman. She's bilingual. Should she be from the Fraser Valley? What sort of qualities should she be?
Well, the best people come from the Fraser Valley. You know that. So we'd probably agree with that proposition.
What sort of qualities are you looking for in a vice regal, in the commander of the forces, as someone who does so many ceremonial things on behalf of us?
Well, certainly being able to speak both official languages fluently, I think, would be a really good start.
General being announced tomorrow. It's a woman. She's bilingual. What do you have any thoughts on? Should there be a Governor General from BC? What sort of qualities you might like to see in a vice regal?
Hopefully, she's a good leader. I'm not sure about that. But I don't think it should matter where exactly she's from or if she's a woman. She just should have the right credentials for the job.